They held on as long as there was something to hold, and then nothing. What you're looking at is the last moment of the greatest maritime disaster in human history. Hundreds of people clinging to the railing of a ship that should never have sunk, on a night that should never have happened. Because here is the truth that history has buried beneath the legend. The Titanic did not sink because of an iceberg. It sank because of decisions. If this story deserves to be told in full, subscribe to this channel, drop a like, and turn on the notification bell now for more thrilling adventures like the one you are about to watch, because we are going all the way back to the beginning. April 14th, 1912. The North Atlantic had gone completely still, a glassy, moonless calm that experienced sailors feared more than storms. And through that stillness, RMS Titanic caught at 22.5 knots, nearly full speed, on a night when the ship's officers already knew, from 7 separate telegrams received that day, that the waters ahead were filled with ice. 7 warnings, most never reached the bridge. The most critical message of the evening, the Masaba warning, sent at 9:40 p.m., reporting a massive ice field directly in Titanic's path, sat buried beneath a stack of first-class passenger telegrams in the wireless room. Operator Jack Phillips had set it aside to handle messages for wealthy passengers. It would never reach Captain Smith. Meanwhile, Captain Edward John Smith, 62 years old, days from retirement, was dining with millionaires in the first-class saloon. J. Bruce Ismay, chairman of the White Star Line, was at the same table, pressing quietly for speed, for a record crossing, for headlines. The ice warnings in his pocket had not dampened his ambition. On the bridge, officers noted the plummeting water temperature, a classic sign of ice proximity. The speed did not change. In the crow's nest, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee scanned the darkness with naked eyes. The binocular case was empty. The key had been misplaced since Southampton. At 11:39 p.m., Fleet saw it, a dark shape low against the black water, close, terrifyingly close. He struck the bell 3 times and grabbed the telephone. 4 words, "Iceberg right ahead." First Officer Murdoch reacted within seconds, ordering hard a starboard, reversing engines, triggering the watertight doors. His actions were textbook, but 46,000 tons at 22 knots does not turn. It continues, and the iceberg was already there. This is the moment that changes everything, and if you want to understand exactly how it unfolded second by second, you need to stay with this story to the end. The collision lasted 10 seconds, a low, grinding tear along 300 feet of hull below the waterline. 5 separate openings, each one a wound the ocean would not stop pouring through. Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, inspected the damage with Captain Smith and closed his notebook in silence. She would sink in under 2 hours. There were lifeboats for half the people aboard. This had been legal, approved, considered sufficient. What followed was not chaos. It was something more tragic than chaos. It was order in the presence of catastrophe. Lifeboats left half empty because passengers didn't believe the ship was sinking. Lifeboat 1 departed with 12 people, built for 40, carrying 2 of the wealthiest passengers aboard. Lifeboat 7 left with 28 of a possible 65. Over 400 lifeboat seats went into the water empty. 10 miles away, the Californian sat stopped in the same ice field, her wireless operator asleep, her crew watching distress rockets burst over the horizon and debating whether they were company signals. At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic was gone. 1,500 people entered water that was -2 degrees Celsius.
The survivors in the lifeboats described what came next as the sound they carried for the rest of their lives. Not individual voices, but one long, continuous human moan rising from the dark water. The ocean does not mark what it takes. It closes over everything, the decisions, the warnings, the empty seats, the letters still sealed in their envelopes, and returns to its stillness. The Titanic did not sink because of an iceberg. It sank because at every moment that mattered, the people with the power to act chose not to.
But the story does not end with the silence of the ocean. It ends with the living. 705 souls pulled from the dark aboard the RMS Carpathia, a ship that had driven through ice fields at full speed for 3.5 hours the moment her captain heard the distress call. Captain Arthur Rostron had broken every cautious protocol of North Atlantic navigation to reach them. He saved every life that remained to be saved. He arrived to find lifeboats scattered across miles of black water, and between them, floating upright in their life jackets, faces turned toward a sky they could no longer see, the ones he could not save. On the Carpathia's deck, survivors stood wrapped in blankets and stared back at the place where the ship had been. There was nothing to see. There is never anything to see. The North Atlantic had already forgotten. What the world could not forget was the inquiry that followed. Both Britain and the United States convened formal investigations into the disaster, and what emerged from the testimony was not the story of an unavoidable tragedy. It was the story of a catastrophe assembled piece by piece from choices that could have gone differently at any moment. The binoculars that were locked away, the ice warnings that were pocketed and ignored, the speed that was never reduced, the lifeboats that were never filled, the Californian, 10 miles away, whose crew watched 8 distress rockets climb into the night sky and chose to believe they meant nothing. Captain Stanley Lord of the Californian would carry that judgment for the rest of his life and argue against it until his death. History has not been kind to him. History has not been wrong. Bruce Ismay, the man who had pressed for speed, who had climbed into collapsible sea with empty seats still available and was rowed away from 1,500 dying people, was never criminally charged. He retired from public life and spent his remaining years in near total seclusion. Survivors never forgave him. He never forgave himself. Captain Smith went down with his ship. So did Thomas Andrews, who spent his final moments moving through the first-class lounge, straightening deck chairs, a gesture so human in its futility that it has never stopped being heartbreaking. Jack Phillips, the wireless operator who kept transmitting after being released from duty, was never found. Wallace Hartley and his musicians, every one of them, died in the water. They were not required to play. No order was given. They simply played because, in the face of everything, it was the only human response left to them. What the Titanic leaves behind is not a lesson about icebergs. The ocean is full of icebergs. Ships navigate them every day. What she leaves behind is a lesson about certainty. The particular and deadly human certainty that disaster belongs to other ships, other nights, other people. The certainty that made 7 ice warnings feel like background noise, that made a calm sea feel like safety rather than a warning, that made 2,224 people board a ship and believe in some unexamined corner of their minds that nothing this large and this magnificent could possibly be brought low by the cold indifference of the natural world. Every catastrophe in human history has been preceded by that feeling. The feeling that the systems are sound, the people in charge are competent, the warnings are probably nothing, and the night ahead is just another night. April 14th, 1912 was just another night.
until it wasn't. The ocean has kept its silence for over a century now. It will keep it for centuries more. But somewhere beneath 12,500 feet of North Atlantic darkness, the bow section of the Titanic sits upright in the sediment, her prow aimed west toward New York, the destination she never reached, still sailing in the only way left to her. She is still trying to finish the crossing. She always will be.
She broke because she was made by human hands. Should be steel. She broke because she was made by human hands. They held on as long as they could, and then nothing. Gentlemen, we have a problem. What is it? The forward watch has spotted something. What kind of something?